The verse we left off last night's discussion is the verse we discuss and we continue over with tonight. I know it's a moment of excitement for people because this is pretty much the last night of actions, and then everyone starts to wind out or wind down from the holy month, and the countdown begins to the end. But however, in this time we've still got opportunities to make sure that our name is registered with those that are saved from the fire of hell. These nights especially, all the way the numbers accumulate of people that are saved right until the last day. In the last day, the amount of all the people that have been saved from the fire of hell, that many are saved on the last day. So it's a build up, and that's the actual climax. Although we will find that people have already began to unwind, and now everyone's starting to invite people because all the pressures are off. So taban, the numbers will decline. But tonight, for those that remain, tonight is that final opportunity to get that big reward, that big chunk of a reward. So for those that are capable, rather than chit-chatting, and you don't need to listen to my blah-blahing and whatever I have to say. Instead, like those that are holding subhat, sit and do tasbih. And as the Sayyid mentioned earlier, try and read Surah Inna Anzalnahu fi Laylatul Qadr 1,000 times. This is one of the best or one of the most recommended actions on this night. So during this night, attempt what you can in doing the actions as you are seated here, so that you fill up this night with all the action that you can possibly fill it up with. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If you imagine someone that's just walked into a hideout, and he enters this hideout, and inside it he finds treasure trove upon treasure upon treasure upon treasure. Gems of all the likes, diamonds, emeralds, rubies, gold and silver coins, and all these different trinkets and different necklaces and crowns and tiaras and all this assortment of jewelry and treasure. Yet he sees a nickel on the ground or a coin, and then he picks it up and he's mesmerized with this coin and ignores all the remaining treasure and employs his time, invests everything that he has to study and look over this coin. People would look at this person in a manner as if to say that this person is somewhat mad, or would either perceive this as an act, or would perceive this as an act of lunacy, to totally ignore everything else around that he can see, but set his eyes on this one piece. This is pretty much the people that have absorbed themselves with Hayat al-Dunya. They've missed the big picture. They've missed what's all around, and they opt for the nickel. We will go over several traditions as we move along. If you take a look at the animal kingdom, the animal has a set way of thinking. Allah Azza wa Jal gives them instinct. They are instinctual. They act upon the instinct. They're hungry, they eat. They're thirsty, they drink. Regardless of what it is that they need, they undertake that certain action and they are finished. There are some humans that live like animals, even though that they have been given the intellect in order to discern between right and wrong. So what differentiates between us and the animal kingdom? What makes us different are our choices. If you look at any animal, take for example a stray cat. A stray cat will eat from your kitchen table a nicely set meal, and a stray cat will eat from your kitchen floor. A stray cat will eat from the garbage tin. A stray cat will eat from a garbage dump. It's all a meal to the stray cat. Even a domesticated cat, one that's been looked after, likewise will eat from any place that food is available. But a human who has the right to be called a human, who acts like a human, is selective of what they eat, where they gather this food from, and how they eat this food. And this is what makes us different from the animal kingdom. When a human being fails to do or enact according to their intellect and what Allah Azza wa Jal has given them, this is when that they fall towards the animal kingdom, but they become less than the animal kingdom, because an animal was not given the choice that the human was given. If you look at this verse, Allah Azza wa Jal says in this verse, اعلموا أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب وله. The first thing that Allah is addressing here is He's letting you understand the value of this world. Why? Because once I can discern, once I can understand what something is, I know how to deal with this thing. If I was to ask you, for example, to knock on someone's door, and this door was made of glass, and I gave you several instruments to use. One of them was a crowbar, one was a hammer, okay, and one was a skewer, you know, those wooden skewers. A person of understanding of how to deal with the glass would not use the crowbar and would not use the hammer, because they would break the glass. Would tend to use, say, the skewer, or let's say a cue, because they can understand, or they understand that it's glass and it will break if I use a hammer or if I use a crowbar. For me to understand what this world is fully and comprehend, then I can deal with this world. Allah Azza wa Jal says that this world, using the words la'ibun wa lahu, that He says that this world is a place of play. It's a place of basically it's a place of play, and a place of it's not a real place. When we say lahu, it's something that eats up time, like what you say, a pastime. It's not some. It's given a definition, or it's given by Allah Azza wa Jal the definition of not being something that carries importance. It's not something that you should strive for. It's something that shouldn't be given this regard. Then he says, وَزِينَةٌ وَتَفَاخُرٌ بَيْنَكُمْ وَتَكَاثُرٌ فِي الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَوْلَادِ. And I mentioned last night about social media and how people boast with one another. This isn't something new. Now it's gone electronic. Now it's entered the cyber world. This is something that's old. People used to always count the numbers that they have. People always used to, as long as I remember, a person would sit down and look at his son. His son's fighting another child, and he wants his son to overcome the other child. It's the nature of man, and this is all it is. It's a pretentious world. It's superficial. And this is the definition when it comes to this world. Allah Azza wa Jal goes on all the way to say, وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا. That when He says, وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا, it means it's only this, nothing else. وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَتَاعُ الْغُرُورِ. Now, if I look at the word mata', mata' is a means. When you say mata'ul ghurur, it is a means. If I was to say, for example, this thing, this object or this element or this thing is a means for that. So this dunya is a means, mata', but what's it for? Al-ghurur. That all the dunya is a means for ghurur. But what is ghurur? Ghurur in this sentence has to do with, ghurur mean that all it is, it's a means, it's nothing but a means of deceptions or deceiving somebody. Taking them away from the real picture. Because that's all that this world is. I'm cold, I need to get warm. I'm hot, I need to cool down. I'm hungry, I need to eat. I'm thirsty, I need to drink. I'm lonely, I need to get married. All these things, and your life is constantly moving on from needs to needs. This is unfortunate. Sorry, I have to say something about this. All the kids sitting here, why don't you move and let the elders sit down? I've had to say this several times. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Can we get all the people that need to rest their backs, sit down? Honestly, if you see your children resting their backs, bring them into the middle. And let the people that need to rest their backs, to rest their backs. This is deplorable. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So, this world constantly gives you something to preoccupy you with. Every time you think you've overcome something, something new turns up. And it never is completed. You can never be satiated. You can never find happiness. If you remember, they made a movie called The Pursuit of Happiness. And in this movie, they mentioned a quote by Thomas Jefferson. That all men, or all humans, have the right to liberty. And all the way till it says, and the pursuit of happiness. And the guy makes a quote in the movie which is good. And then he ruins it. He says, the pursuit of happiness, it is as if Thomas Jefferson was saying that it is a pursuit that you can never achieve it. And that's true. In this world, you can never achieve happiness. It wasn't. Respite and rest is only when you link your life with the next world. When you're working towards the next world, this is when you get contentment. This is when you feel that happiness. And this is why we mentioned celebrity suicides many times. And why I mention this, the celebrities, why do they turn to drugs? Because when it's all over, when the show has finished, then he has to go back to his normal home. He has to go back to his normal life. And then they feel that feeling or that emptiness. It's over. If I have to go out there, I have a show once, and the thought of the show one day ending. How many times have you heard of sports stars that end up going wayward after their lives? Often. Because they miss out on this. Look at, for example, a very good example is Arnold Schwarzenegger. The guy is like 2 steps away from his grave. And he's still making movies. Why does he continue to make movies? He's trying to live that old glory. He's got money. The guy is very rich. The guy was the governor of California, the 4th largest economy in the world, not in the United States. 4th largest economy in the world. So he had all the finances, he had all the money, but now watch how he's promoting his movie. He moves from one country to another. He moves around the world because he wants to relive that old glory, that fame that he has. It's not about the money. Even if you notice when Australian Football Australia purchased that Alessandro Del Piero. You think about why would he come and play here, and why would he continue to play? Because when he comes to this smaller arena, smaller circuit, he gets that same glory that he achieved when he was playing for Juventus. When he was playing there, because over in the Serie A, Italian league, When he gets older, he doesn't become anything significant. But now, as he moves towards playing in the Australian League, which is dwarfed by the Serie A giants, he looks like something that is reputable, or something that is recognizable and different to the other players, because they're not of the same level, same standard. But what brings them back is they want to relive that old glory. They want that fame. That's why when you see sports stars leaving a club, then they go to a inferior country to play, because they want to hear the crowds roar their name again. They want to relive it and relive it, but it eventually diffuses and goes away, and it no longer exists. And they lose everything. This is the way the world works. When it comes to this dunya, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, when he speaks to his sons, he mentions these words. He says, لا تبغي الدنيا وإن بغتكما. He brings a point that is very essential. Don't seek and don't go for this world, even if it seeks you. In other words, the world will never leave you alone. The dunya will always bring you back in. Every time you think you are out of it, it will suck you back in. It will bring you back in to, alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. It will bring you back into this world that you think you avoided. So it's an eternal struggle. The battle between these two worlds, ad-dunya wal-akhirah, is an eternal struggle. It does not cease until you die. Even on the last moments of your life, the moment of ihtidar, in your last moments you are tested. You are still struggling between two worlds. If you see some people on their last moments and what they say to their kids, some people in their last moments, they warn their kids of the evils of this world, and they remind them of the hereafter, and they remind them to do good acts. And then some people on their deathbed, what are they still worrying about? They tell their kids, you know, buy some shares in this company, don't forget about that investment, worry about that. You think, man, this guy's about to die. They're still preoccupied with this world. They still cannot let go. They hold on to this world before they leave. Another hadith عن أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام, he says, من أحب دنياه أضر بآخرته. So it's not, if someone loves his world, this world, what does he do? He has exchanged for what? For that next world. It's one or the other. It's either you select, and I've mentioned before how we live in this world. That doesn't mean become a hermit. We've already mentioned that. It's either I live for the akhirah. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, وَابْتَغِي فِي مَا أَتَاقَ اللَّهِ الدَّارُ الْآخِرَةِ وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. That you are told in the Quran that you have your hereafter and you got your dunya to live. But the mahwar, or the pivotal part, the essential part is the akhirah. That the akhirah must always be my main priority, my main objective, and what I strive for, and nothing else. Now Allah Azza Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam mentions in this hadith, he says that the dunya sought them, and they were captured but released themselves through self-sacrifice. They gave up things in order to do this. Now let's take a look at what Amir al-Mu'mineen says with regard to this world, where he speaks. This narration, and you've probably heard this narration many times, but this narration was mentioned when one of those that were present listening to Amir al-Mu'mineen was asked by Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan about him. He says, he asked him about his situation, his condition. He says, I have seen him. This is his reply about Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. He says, I have seen him several times in the mihrab, meaning in the niche where you pray. He says, and as he holds on to his beard, and he says, and he makes he mentions the word that he makes a sound, like a sound of, like a groaning sound, a sound of pain. And he listens to what he's saying. This is the feeling that he feels towards when he speaks to himself. He said at this point, he says, Ya dunya, ilayki anni. Speaking to this world, ilayki anni. And then he says, Abi ta'arradti am ilayya tashawwaqti. That have you presented yourself to me? That you are presenting yourself to me? That you are yearning towards me? And then he says, La hana hinuki. That basically your time to impress has not come. That you have not been able to achieve what you want. He's speaking about how this word that he's speaking to himself, how the world deals with you. It's a 24-hour war machine against you. It does not stop. Every moment of your life, just to come to a majlis and listen. And I've heard this from many people, not one person, so please do not think I'm talking about you. I've heard this from too many people. That when you tell them, why don't you turn up to the majlis? They say, I do the Al-Ameli at home. I've heard this too often. And even when you tell people, why don't you listen to Majlis Abu Abdullah al-Hussein Ashura? They say, yeah, I sit at home and I watch it on TV. Everyone sits at home and can watch it on TV. In fact, it's more comfortable. You get into your chair or your recliner. You know, every time you feel like getting something, you go to the fridge. You can sit in your most comfortable clothes. But why do we gather? Do you know why we gather? Do you know why we are here? Why are we told, if you pick up, for example, Minhaj al-Salihin, and you read the Risali, and you read about people that pray their prayers in the masajid, why are we supposed to go in these congregations? Sayyid Sistani in his Minhaj, if you read, he says it is recommended that you do not deal with people that don't pray in the mosque. It is recommended. It's mustahab that you don't deal with them. He says, in fact, it's recommended that you don't marry from them. Why? Because the importance of you congregating, it gives everyone else, firstly, several things. It gives them that uplifting feeling. It gives them more strength in their faith. More importantly, when I pray in congregation or I gather in congregation, if there is one righteous person, someone that is near to God amongst you, then all your actions are accepted. The prayers that you pray is accepted when you are in a congregation where there's one righteous person. One. Just one, that's it. You just need just one. And if I know myself and I'm sitting at home, unless I think I'm something, but deep down everyone knows how meager they are and how little they are. So this is why I come here. So I sit la'allu, and this is what I ask Allah Azza wa Jal, that there is more than one person here that supplicates, and with their supplication I float in that same wind, you know, a bit like a slipstream in a motorbike race. I take that wind and I go for the finish line. And this is the whole idea of gathering here. To being together. Also, you meet someone that may have a problem. Someone may have a problem. It could be a moral issue. Doesn't have to always be financial. Moral issue. Someone just wants you to hear them out and help them. By helping them with a few words. Just this suffices. Just this is enough for you to come to these gatherings. And not to avoid attending places like this. Then he says, Hayhat ghurri ghayri. In other words, he says, deceive other than I. He says, Dunya, go deceive other than I. لا حاجة لي فيك قد طلقتك ثلاثا لا رجعت فيها. He says, go deceive other than I. I have no need for you. I have divorced you 3 times that you may not return to me. That no matter what you try and do, I've cut off my relationship with you. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam says, and then he says what we have mentioned over the other nights. He says, فَعَيْشُكِ قَصِيرٌ. This is the first problem with the dunya. It's short. And this is an obvious problem. And he says, وَخَطَرُكِ يَسِيرٌ. what it means, that the danger here is basically exposed. It's apparent. He says, وَأَمَلُكِ حَقِيرٌ, that the aspiration and the hope for this world is basically haqir, means it's non-existent, it's naught. There is no hope in this world. Does anyone have hope and aspiration to be here forever? Does anyone here believe in immortality? Does anyone here not believe that death is inevitable? That death is not imminent, but eventually it will be. That it will come at a certain time. But you can say imminent on the scope that it's not that far away in comparison to the age of the earth. That it will come. Is there a person here that does not believe this? So why do I have any aspiration for this world? And then he says, من قلة الزاد وطول الطريق وبعد السفر وعظيم المورد. Firstly, he mentions several things. As if to say, from what he says? He says, the little provisions that what provisions is he talking about? قلة الزاد, what's he talking about? That we have taken not enough with us, as in food, or not enough supplies. He's speaking about what? He's speaking about actions. The little actions we have done. And then he mentions طول الطريق. It is a long way ahead of you. A long road ahead of you. And بعد السفر. That it is a long journey. And then he says وعظيم المورد. This is why this night that you are here, these nights that you are keeping vigil with, you have to supplicate, because the target is difficult. To achieve paradise and the maghfirah, because none of you honestly want to enter paradise after going through a long round of being cleansed from your actions. This is the night where you can cleanse yourself. This is the night where you can ask Allah to be of those that are saved from the fire of hell. In these nights, these are the nights for you to say, oh Allah, save me. And you will know if you are saved by what? By what you do after tonight. What's left in the upcoming days. How you start dealing. If you constantly, for example, if you have a habit of lying, whether you continue to lie. If you have a habit of being dishonest, whether you continue to be dishonest. If you are someone that owes people money, or someone that has harmed anyone, whether you have, after tonight, make up for this. It's not about just saying astaghfirullah and then just going back to living a life where I'm dealing drugs or buying hot goods and selling hot goods and going back to the way I used to be. What's the purpose? It's about, am I reflecting over tonight? Will I change tonight? Will I be a new person that's born tonight? These are opportunities. The only problem is I don't know when the next one will come for me, whether this is my last opportunity. So I must grab this opportunity with both hands. Finally, there are those, and this is the muttaqeen, are those where the akhirah is their only worry. The only thing that they employ themselves with. They deal with the next world. Whenever they want to undertake an action, it has to do with the next world. If there's no benefit for the next world, they don't undertake it. Now, if you look, firstly, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If you look sometimes at people and their regard to this world, they do not understand a simple rule when it comes to this world. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he speaks about the dunya, he says, Ad-dunya taghur, wa tadur, wa tamur. That firstly, we mentioned that the dunya is a means of what? Deception. Firstly, it deceives you. So you could say it is a mirage. It's not as it appears to be. It puts something up there that's not really there. And then once you fall into this, you fall into harm. How often have you heard stories of people undertake a certain action? I remember, for example, when we were school students, and there were, at the time back in the 1980s when we were in primary school, one of the biggest issues that was going around, they actually made a game about it. There's a game that they have, that Subway Surfer. It's based on this thing that they used to have back in the 70s and the 80s that was big, that was called bombing. Now they don't use that term anymore because it means something else. But back then, bombing, a bomber was someone that would tag buildings with spray cans. Someone that would put their tags, name tags, they would say, they'd call him a bomber, someone that would graffiti. And you'd hear stories of people day in, day out, sticking their head out of a train and graffitiing the side of the train and forgetting that the train actually enters tunnels now and then. You know? So one day he's hanging out to, literally, no pun intended, to graffiti the train, and then his legs are left, or sometimes you have gruesome stories where someone is torn apart. Sometimes they're thrown out, sometimes they're knocked out, sometimes they're decapitated, or something of that kind. You hear these stories all the time from a young age, and their idea, do you know why they used to actually do it? They used to actually undertake this action. This is honest reason. Because when their tag is there, it shows that this is my mark. You know, a bit like a dog mark in his territory. That there's my mark, so people know I was there. But they don't look at the ramifications of this action. They're deceived into thinking that this action is good. That this action is right. This action will give me recognition. Not overlooking what the consequences will be for this action. And this is where it comes, where Amir al-Mu'mineen says, وَتَضُرْ, that this world harms. And then finally, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, وَتَمُرْ, that then it passes. That you never get what you were seeking in this world. It was never meant for you. So it's illogical. It's nonsensical for someone to strive for this world. It's nonsensical for me to worry about this world. What is real is what you are doing here. What is real is you dealing with the hereafter and working for the hereafter. May Allah Azza wa Jal make your actions on these nights accepted and grant you all emancipation and safety from the fire of hell. ببركة الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.